Hi, I'd like to show you how to make a high-fidelity mockup and high-fidelity prototype using one of the online prototyping tools that's available today. Although there's a lot of other options out there, I'm just going to pick Figma today because that's quite popular. So go to figma.com and click Try Figma for free and log in. Once you're in, go into the upper right-hand corner and click on New File. And that'll open up a workspace that looks something like this. The way that this tool works is you put in a bunch of screenshots or what look like screenshots in the middle of this canvas, and you can zoom in and zoom out to see them. So right here, if I click on frame, then over on the right hand side I have the design palette selected, and I can pull in a screen of a particular size. So I'm going to click desktop, and this fills the screen. So this is going to be where I'm drawing. If I click on that again and go through that same sequence, then I can add in unlimited numbers of canvases that have this size and shape, and I can just zoom in and out to work on any particular one of them. So you'll see what I mean by that in just a little bit. All right, so what shall I create? Well, what I'd like to prototype or create a mock-up of right now is a typical WordPress site. If you were to Google WordPress site, you'll see images of what WordPress sites typically look like, and commonly they're going to have some type of banner or large image across the top and then some white text underneath. So I want to create something that looks approximately like that, as if I were designing for some future application. One of the most typical shapes you work with when you're doing mock-ups is the rectangle. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on rectangle and draw a big one right here. It's going to be the banner. All right. Now I want there to be an image here, and I'd like that image to be royalty free so that I don't have to pay for it. Fortunately, there is a plugin for this program that allows us to use free images, and that program, that plugin, is called Unsplash. If I right click on a shape that I've imported into a document and go down to plugins, I can go to manage plugins, and notice it opened up a different tab here. And if I go to plugins, I can select different plugins. The one I want is Unsplash, so if I click on that and click install, then it will be ready to be used. All right, so coming back here, I'll show you how we would use that. I'm going to right click on this shape, go to plugins, and then click Unsplash. After a moment, it brings up this menu, and I want to make a barbecue themed website. So I'll click on search and I'll type in barbecue, and up come a bunch of images. So if I click on any one of them, then after a few moments it will import it into the shape that I have selected in my canvas area. I'm going to use this particular one and then close that tool. All right, so I've got a great start to my website. Typically we're going to have text on there, so I'll create a box by clicking on T and dragging and dropping, and the text I'll put on here is Dave's barbecue sauce. Well, clearly this is much too small. I can't see it. So whenever I'm clicking on some shape, I can see options related to that over on the right. So over here where it says text, I want to change that from 12 to 36. Maybe I could try some other sizes as well. All right, that seems to work for me. Drag it around so it's in a good spot. Okay, so it's not looking half bad at this point. Now let's imagine that Dave's Barbecue Sauce website is some type of social site, and people need to click on it on some button and log in, and then they can see other members of the community and talk about barbecue sauce recipes. All right, so I want to put a button here that allows me to log in. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm actually going to choose the rectangle again and add that shape right there. And I'm going to have to do a few things with this. one thing I want to do is I want to put some text on top of it. So I'm going to actually put it a little bit underneath it because I want to drag it on top. And so I will put here log in, and then I'm going to make sure I have an arrow cursor and drag it on there. Okay, and then I'll just kind of modify the shape of that text box. Okay, so now I have a rectangle with some text on top. I'm going to highlight two of those things, and notice they are highlighted over here on the left hand side. I could just do a shift click over here on the left hand side to highlight those two items. I will right click and I will say group selection. Now if I were to drag on that and move it, everything would look good. Okay, I still need to make some more modifications. I don't really like a square box because that's not a modern look. Rounded rectangle is more of a modern look for websites today. So with this rectangle selected, I'm going to go up here to the upper right, and there's this radius tool. So let's see what happens when I increase the radius. Aha, it puts some type of curve on the button. And I'm going to change that to 50. And that's starting to look like a pretty good shape at this point. So I like that. Okay, last thing is I want to change the color. So if I click on something that has a color, then, and actually, let me open this up a little bit. I want to make sure that I'm on the rectangle in particular. When I have a particular shape with a color selected, I can see over here on the right hand side, it's fill color. So I could give it a lot of different colors manually, and that would be just fine. But usually when we're creating websites, we want all of the images that are within a particular page to be complementary in some way. Well, one way I can do that is, and here's a little trick from designers, is I can steal colors from the image that's on the page. So I'm going to click on this, and rather than clicking one of the colors that are up here, I'm going to click this eyedropper, and then go over here to these overalls and steal a color from there. All right, now because it's a little dark, it doesn't look too great yet, but it does have a complementary color to what's in there. All right, so another thing I need to do is I need to change that text color. So let's change that text color from black to white. All right, things are looking pretty good. All right, there's another thing I'd like to do. Let's click on that rectangle again. And if I come over to that rectangle, I would like to add a drop shadow. So right now there's no effects selected, but if I click this plus sign right here, it adds a subtle drop shadow, and I could make it even more extreme if I wanted to using some of these options by clicking on the little sunshine icon, but for now that's good enough. So I'm zooming in so you can see, ooh, there's a nice little shadow there. Okay, so obviously I could do more to this website. Maybe I'd use some lines and some additional text and images if I wanted to make this a true front page to a website. But I want to get on to making a subpage right now. So right now this is a nice high fidelity mock-up. You could export it. You could use these images directly for using or for creating an actual web page. But let's go ahead and create a subpage. All right, so I'm going to click here on frame and click on desktop again. All right, so now I have another workspace. So like I mentioned previously, I can do this unlimited times. All right, I want to zoom in, and now for this subpage, let's imagine that I don't need this big old image banner on there. Maybe I just want some subtle colors. So what I'm going to do is just put two tones of color at the top. So I'll put two rectangles. The first rectangle, I'm going to color it with this little eyedropper, the same color as that button up there. And underneath it, I'm going to make another smaller rectangle. And I'd like this smaller rectangle to be maybe a similar color as this one, but lighter. So I'm going to click on it, do the eyedropper, get that color, but now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. Okay, so it probably has some element of, or some degree of blue in it. There's a little white gap there, so I'm going to click on it and click the up arrow, Okay, now the space is gone. All right, one last thing I'd like to do to pretty this up is with this rectangle selected, I'd like to again add an effect and add the drop shadow. Okay, so if I were to zoom in, you can see, oh, hey, that's not looking too bad, all things considered. All right, now I'm not going to have time to do everything that I'd like to do on here, but I'd like to show another trick. Now imagine that I'd logged in and there's a list of community members here. So, and I'd like to see little pictures of them. So I'm going to grab this little elliptical tool and draw one circle. And then this is kind of a cool trick. If I click the Alt button, notice how my arrow changes. So I hold down Alt and I drag and it makes a copy of whatever shape is on the screen. So if you've got something looking exactly like you like it, you can make copies of it. Okay, so let's put some users on here. Now remember before we used that Unsplash plugin. I go down here to Plugins, Unsplash, and I'm going to type in search, and I'm going to type in people. All right, or maybe I should type in person because I don't want multiple people in the picture. So I'll click on her picture and look at that. Shows up nicely in there. Do it again and again and again. All right. And if I needed to put some names next to them, I don't know what the handle would be for barbecue people, but we'll call this Pitmaster, I don't know, Pittsburgh or something. Anyway, so as you can see, you can use different shapes and drop shadows and rectangles to create what looks like a relatively pretty site in a short amount of time. This is something that a web developer could pull from to build their actual HTML. Okay, now at this point, it's just a high fidelity mock-up, meaning it's not interactive. But one of the nice things about the modern prototyping tools is you can often take your designs and turn them into interactive prototypes. So over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to click on the prototype button or option, and then I'm going to click on this button right here. All right, and what I want to do is prepare for the fact that clicking on this button is going to take me to another page. This page right now is called Desktop 1, and this one's called Desktop 2. As I click on this button and highlight it, it says Interaction None. And I want to say On Click, and then underneath it says, what do you want to do? And I want to say Navigate to, and then what am I going to navigate to? Desktop 2. And so notice what happened. It put an arrow coming from that button over to here. Okay, once I've done that, I can click this present icon or a play icon, if you will, and this will run this prototype in another window. So I'll click present, and the resolution is a little bit more extreme than I would have wanted, but you kind of get the idea. Maybe I can zoom out a little bit, I'm not sure. But the key idea here is that I can mouse over this area, which is for login, and click on it, and then I get to my subpage. So the reason why we do this is because we're creating all these designs, this prototype, this mock-up of a potential application. And by the way, you can do this for websites or for mobile devices. And then you can click this share icon for your prototype, and people can watch it in real web browsers or on real mobile devices and click around on it as if it were a real application. So we call that a prototype. And when you do this with, share this prototype with people, they can give you feedback about whether they like it or not. And it feels like it's an actual, when you get the resolution right, it feels like it's a real working application, but all you've done is just put some images on there and made a couple clickable areas such that when you click on them, it takes you to other places. You can also animate it so that when you click between different pages, it does certain type of things, but we're not going to get into the complicated features. At any rate, what I hope you take away from this is the idea that you can use a tool like this to quickly design something that is very beautiful, and then you can turn it into a prototype that you can click on all of the different buttons, features, graphics, have it jump to different pages, and then share it with clients so they can approve the look and feel of that design.